Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu, sitting in for Riz Khan. Walking across America for 22 years and refusing to speak, he wanted to make a personal protest about an oil spill. His concern for the environment is shared by a Hollywood actor who's made green living a lifelong journey. Both our guests today took up the green cause long before it became trendy, and both have been called a little, quote, crazy for taking their activism to an extreme level. We'd like to include your views on the show. Today we're asking, can a one-person campaign bring about real change? You can contact us at the numbers there at the bottom of your screen, and the lines are open right now. Joining me to discuss this from Los Angeles is veteran Hollywood actor and environmental activist Ed Begley Jr. For more than 30 years, he's been campaigning on environmental issues. He has a television series that provides advice on how people can live a greener life. That series takes the same name as his new book, Living Like Ed, a guide to the eco-friendly life, which provides everyday advice on going green. And joining me right here in the studio in Washington, D.C. is John Francis. He's the founder of Planet Walk, a non-profit educational organization that aims to raise awareness about environmental issues. His book, Planet Walker, describes his 22 years of walking and 17 years of silence to protest an oil spill in San Francisco Bay in 1971. Welcome to both of you to the show. John, let me start with you. You spent 22 years walking across the United States and other parts of the world as a protest against this oil spill in San Francisco Bay, and that was in the early 70s.
Yes.
Some would say that was a bit extreme, if not a little bit eccentric.
Yeah. Well, first I want to thank you for having me here, and I'd like to say hi to Ed, and I appreciate all the work that he's been doing. And sometimes what is appropriate action does look extreme to some people. And that's because I think when new things are happening, when something's coming from a new place, it's going to look very different. It may look very different. And I think my walking and not talking was something like that. It looked very different.
And right now, when you look back at that, what do you think it achieved?
Well, it took me 22 years after seeing an oil spill, actually 20 years, of walking across the country, learning how to walk and learning how to live on foot first. And then the not speaking, I started several months after I had stopped riding in motorized vehicles. I think the most important thing that taught me was how to listen. And walking across the United States and listening and getting my education as I went, by the time I reached the East Coast of the United States, it started in California. I had my undergraduate, a master's, and a PhD in environmental studies, and wrote on oil spills. And when I was writing on oil spills, no one was interested in oil spills, but in 1989, Exxon Valdez happened just as I was finishing my final examinations, and everyone wanted to know about oil spills. So when I did reach the East Coast of the United States, I was, and I started to speak on Earth Day to remind myself that I was going to speak for the environment. I ended up being hired by the United States government, the Coast Guard, in helping to write the regulations for the United States, oil pollution regulations for the United States.
Okay, let's go to Ed Begley in Los Angeles. Ed, you haven't walked across the world, nor have you remained silent, but you are an advocate of what is known as eco-conscious living, or to put it another way, as the publicity for your book does, it says, live simply so that others may live simply. Just tell us a little bit about that.
I just want to say I'm humbled to be here on the show with John, and I can only aspire to his level of commitment. It's wonderful what he's done, and I do what I do in my very simple way, and there's many people with a lower carbon footprint than me, but the idea is to live simply so that others can simply live, to not waste resources, something that I save where I live in Studio City is that much more for someone else in another part of the world, indeed another part of the country, probably even another part of my very same city. So I try to live the life that I feel I require, and to do it with very little resources. I grow a lot of my food. I get most of my electricity from the sun. I have a wind turbine in the California desert I bought many years ago as an investment. That's put out many homes worth of power. So I'm carbon neutral and then some. And I've just tried to do this since 1970. I got fed up with the smog in 1970, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to take action.
But what you're doing also requires quite a high level of commitment on the one hand. It also requires quite a lot of dedication. I mean, eco-conscious living is not just about recycling, is it?
No, I started recycling in 1970 and composting and doing everything that I could afford. I was a struggling actor back then, and I didn't have much money, but it was the first Earth Day. I wanted to do something, and as I said, I was fed up with the smog, so I did all this cheap stuff, and what happened next I was quite surprised by. I saved money. Everything that I did, quote unquote, for the environment was good also for my pocketbook. So I did more, and I saved more money, and I did more. And then 20 years after I first did it, I was able to afford solar panels. And you know, I've been on this path now 38 years, and the more I do to, quote unquote, protect the environment, the more money I save.
You know, you mentioned that term earlier on, the carbon footprint. What exactly is a carbon footprint?
For every action that you take, you know, the building of my electric car even, the building of my mountain bike, the construction of my home, whatever electricity I use, you know, in this studio here that you would count as my electricity, all of that, there's usually a CO2 figure associated with that, an amount of CO2 that's emitted from a power plant, CO2 emitted from a tailpipe. If you use air travel, CO2 emitted from burning kerosene up at 31,000 feet. So all those things are CO2. You have a carbon footprint, if you will, an amount of CO2 that you are putting out there for your lifestyle, for all the many things that you do. And if you can mitigate it, if you can get your electricity from the sun as I do, if you can buy a wind turbine as I did many years ago as an investment, you can make a lot of green power, thereby eliminating so much CO2 going out in the atmosphere. You can be carbon neutral if you wish.
Okay, I want to go to an email that we received from Lorraine in London, and the question she asks, actually, I want to put to both of you, but let me ask John Francis first. She writes, I hear so many people say, what can I do? It's only me, like joining up the seams. Everyone who has the courage to say it is how it is will be surprised how many others do the same.
Well, that's true. I think that what I discovered was that when I started walking, and well, I started in 72, and there weren't very many people doing that. But as I continued walking and the environmental consciousness, the environmental atmosphere changed, more and more people wrote me and said that they wanted to do the same thing, or that they were actually doing the same thing. And I kind of gathered from the number of people who took the time to write me to talk about what they were doing and to ask me advice on it. There were, you know, many more who were just doing that. And I believe that each one of us affects so many people, the people in our community, the people in our family, that we all learn and teach each other, that as this goes on, more and more people join the ranks of those people looking to be carbon neutral and those people looking to be planet walkers on their feet.
Well, Ed, let me put that question to you as well. This is from Lorraine in London, and she says, what can I do? It's only me. Because sometimes the entire problem of eco-conscious living and being environmentally friendly seems so overwhelming.
It seemed like just a feel-good thing at the time when I started this path in 1970, but fortunately other people were involved at first unbeknownst to me. Then I got to know them. People like Sabrina Schiller at the Coalition for Clean Air, Gladys Mead at the American Lung Association, people like John out there raising awareness in such an important way. And now we have 4 times the amount of cars in LA. I'm not saying that's good news, it's just news, it is. 4 times the cars since 1970, yet we have half the smog. We can do this. We can, you know, with technology, we can solve some of these problems. But let me be very clear, my favorite form of transportation is not my electric car, it is not even my bicycle, it's walking. Walking is my #1 favorite, so I applaud John so many ways for what he's doing to raise awareness about that.
Yes.
Okay, let's get a call in from one of our viewers. This is Ricky calling from South Africa. Ricky, go ahead with your call.
I take my hat off to the gentleman that you have on the show at the moment. They must be commended for what they've done, and it helps.
What is your question, Ricky?
They both are American. America has not signed the global treaties with respect to global warming and air pollution, etc., etc. Yet it is one of the nations that are the most polluting in the world, and the pollution that is being created in global warming is affecting the poorer nations. What they've done is great, but what global warming and the people global warming is affecting, they've done nothing for.
Okay, let me put that. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks for your call. Let me put that to John. It's an issue that comes up all the time. The fact that the United States has not been a signatory to the Kyoto Protocol on climate change.
Well, it's very interesting, and I agree with the caller, and I'm sorry to say that we haven't signed that treaty. I just recently was speaking at a conference with former Vice President Al Gore, who came back from the first Kyoto meeting very enthused that we were going to do that, and he went to the Senate, and it turned out, he said he was so disappointed only one senator voted to sign that agreement, and that seems to suggest that we have not the political will, but that may change, and I think that as many as each person the difference that each person can make can convince our politicians that maybe it's time to change now.
Okay, we are going to take a break right now. We'll be back talking more about green issues right after that. Stay with us.